Since we were one speaker short, I thought I will take the liberty of using her time also. Well, HR is a topic or branch of knowledge which has been very close to my heart. And as I was telling some people the other day, those who aspire to be in the field of HR, they should feel gratified and happy to know that the HRD movement in the country started from Ahmedabad. The first scientific treatise on HR in the form of a book was published by two of my colleagues, Professor Uday Parikh and T.V. Rao, in 1981. This was the first scientific publication on HR in the country. Earlier, we did not have trained HR people. We didn't have people who could boast that my specialization is HR. In fact, when I look at MBAs, I always feel lost when they say I have a specialization in finance, specialization in HR. What exactly and how do they get this specialization so quickly? But anyway, you get that and you have a certificate to prove that you have been through some special HR courses and all. But what exactly is HR? Before I come to some specific issues, I thought I'll share some stray thoughts with you. You write HR, human resource. In organizations, when you look at HR implemented, not HR as a subject of study, you always feel confused whether you are putting emphasis on H or on R. You are dealing with the resource or you are dealing with human. In the Western countries, these were the economists who gave us the idea of HR, so they highlighted the role of resource, because economists are always concerned about resources. In India, mercifully, we were saved from suffering inflicted by the economists, and most of us who were initially involved with the movement were psychologists. So the psychologist's perception of what is HR is different from the economist's perception of what is HR. These are larger issues, but as time passes, as you go into industry and you climb up the ladders, you'll realize these issues. Are you being treated as a human or are you being treated as a resource? And again, when we say that we are dealing with human beings in organizations, that is what basically HR deals with. How do you define the human? What will you like to include and what will you like to exclude? So I developed a 3H model of HR. And this is based on the historical development of HR all over the world, including India. So I talked about the first H, with which concern for the human element in the organization started, as the hands element. Hands element means that the employer is concerned with your hands. Your hands work, you get paid. Your hands don't work, you don't get paid. There is nothing like a legal contract between you and your employer. The only contract is with hands. Luckily or unluckily, we still use this word hands in organizational context when we need people or when we talk of people. When you require more people on a job, on some assignment, on some team working, generally you use this expression, I need more hands. You don't say I need more human beings. So our concern for hands still persists. I'll share with you a very unusual case, which not many HR textbooks have been able to catch. You know about child labor? Everybody knows about child labor? Okay. Can you think of infant labor? Infant labor. Labor which is given to an infant who is 3 or 4 months old, not 3 or 4 years old. We see in India a lot of 3 or 4 year old children working in various type of situations. They may be working in domestic services, they may be working in dhabas, they may be working in fields. So that's not unusual. I'm going to share with you a very, very fascinating, though very unpleasant case. About infant labor. You know, the first phase, as I told you, when people started thinking about the human element in the organizations, was focusing on hands. So as an employer, everybody says, you work, you get paid, you don't work, you don't get paid. You don't want to work on a Sunday, you will not be paid on a Sunday. You don't want to work on Diwali and Holi, you will not get paid. So there's nothing like, the concept of a work week or a work month or something like that, that you get your wages in spite of the fact whether you are present or absent, whether you are working or not working. No? And you have got legal safeguard. There were no legal safeguard. There were no labor laws. Labor laws came much later. Concern for human element is very old. Now, this is a situation where in an area where there were mining operations. I don't know how many of you are familiar with the mining industry, one of the oldest industry in the world, organized industry. No? And most of the mines, as you might have read or you might have guessed, are underground operations. No? People work underground to dig out things, whether it is coal or it is lignite or it is zinc or it is gold or whatever it is. So you have to go deep down underground and work there. You'll be surprised that today in the country and in most of the countries, the work day is 8 hours long. The shift in offices, shift in factories generally is 8 hours. The working day was 100 years ago, in India also, the working day shift was 12 hours, legally. And there were industries where the shift could be as long as 20 hours. So, law has come to our rescue. Law has supported the HR movement by providing more and more comfort to the human operators. We have certain type of ILO conventions, International Labour Organization conventions, which stipulate certain type of requirements, legal requirements, environmental requirements for various industrial situations. And one of the ILO conventions stipulates that in mining industry, anywhere in the world, women are not supposed to work underground. Okay? But there was a time when there was no ILO and there was no law or nothing of that sort. So women also worked underground. In India also women work underground in spite of the fact that India is a signatory to the ILO Convention on Mining. So there was a young couple, husband and wife, both working underground. The shift is 12 hours. They had to go down the pit, as it is called. They were living somewhere else, because you are not living just at your place of work, maybe a few kilometers away. So you can add another half an hour for commuting in the morning, half an hour for going back in the evening. So actually they are on job for about 12 to 14 hours, 13 to 14 hours. And there is nothing like a fixed lunch break or tea break. No? The environment is very harsh because you are working underground, a few thousand feet below the earth. Now, after some time, the wife, the woman, was pregnant, and there was no facility of maternity leave or any other type of leave, you can imagine. So she was off work, because this is the period of hands. You work, you get paid. You don't work, you don't get paid. Simple. So she is off the job. She had a baby, and because of economic hardship or whatever reasons, she had to start working again. Now today you have, in most of the good organizations, you have creche system for, working women can keep their children there, and even very young mothers, they can look after the child in betweens. But there is no such facility. I mean, it's a very different scenario for you possibly to comprehend. So they thought that the best alternative will be to take the infant along when they go to work. So young father, young mother, and the infant, they started going down in the mine. And then they thought of assigning some work to this infant. That's why I said infant labor. In the mines, there are various types of hazards. Some of you might have read about, in HR, we talk about environment, health, safety. I call it SHE, safety, health, environment. And there are laws and there are rules and regulations governing various types of industries about such things. So these people who used to work in the mines, they used to carry their food packets, because there was nothing like, a break of an hour or 2 hours where you come up again, have your food, and then go down. You are inside there for 12 hours at least. And as I was saying, there are various types of hazards in the mines. Sometimes there are accidents. There can be flooding of a mine. There can be various types of gases which can kill people. There can be disasters like things falling, in the mine. Suppose this is the area which you have dug up. Something may fall and people may get trapped. Almost every month we get one report or the other. Recently, 4 days back, there was a report from China, mining accident. Before that, we had our own mining accidents. So it's not uncommon, even in the present day scenario of mining operations. Now, one of the hazards, besides these better known hazards, that is gas or water or falling of things and all, since you are operating way down, this place, hundreds or thousands of feet below, this is also the place where there are certain type of snakes and creatures, because that is their normal habitat. You are intruding into their habitat. So they are living there, and there might be a snake bite. But there are also rats and rodents. And these rats and rodents also can cause havoc to the people who are working in that environment. And many times, these rats and rodents will eat away the food which was kept there by the mine workers. So the assignment given to the infant was that the food packet and the infant were placed side by side. The infant will be making certain noises or certain movements, and this will scare away the rats, and food will be safe. So this assignment worked well. The food remained safe, and things went on for a few months. And suddenly one day, either the rats and rodents were very hungry or very angry or aggressive or whatever. So they attacked the food packets. They ate away the food. And they also ate away the infant. Now, let me assure you, this incident did not take place in India or in Asia. This was 19th century England. I read about this case in the annals of British Parliament when I was in UK, and I find that this is one of the earliest instances of how the human being was treated by industry, which employed them. Yeah. So it has a long, long history. You know, it's not something which you see in the modern times, in the modern textbooks, coming from US or UK or India or somewhere else. This is concern for human element, or absence of concern for human element is not a new problem. We sometimes voluntarily enter into such type of situations. Like I know in the IT sector, usually we expect people to work for 12 hours. The law of the land says you are supposed to work for 8 hours. So when you agree to join certain type of industry, you accept that this is what is going to happen. Now, what's happened over the period of years, that people, young people like you, who enter into organizations, your relationship with the organization is mostly transactional. Transactional means you show to the organization that I'm a very competent person, you hire me. I'll give you my labor, you give me my money. Don't expect anything more. So I have no plans of staying with you for 5 years. You know, when people talk about placement and those type of issues, you know, MBAs are always bugged with this concept. You know? I have done this. I have asked many times students who need my help for placement. You ask your parents to give me a written undertaking that you will work with the organization for 3 years. I'll get you placed. You don't want to work for 3 years with the same organization. You want to try out more and more organizations. So, your relationship is transactional. There is a transaction. Me and my employer. There is no relationship between me and my organization. It's a transaction. It's a pure economic transaction. I give you my talent, you give me my money. Don't expect any deeper relationship. So from both sides, from the employer side as well as from the employee side, you know, people have come to now believe that those who are recruited are not going to last with us for long. Whether they are good or not, that's a different matter. They themselves don't come with a mindset that I'm going to be with this organization for 5 years or 10 years or something like that. Now there are various types of technological issues which HR people are required to face today. For example, the problem of technology obsolescence. Things are becoming obsolete very fast. So when you have to deal with sophisticated technology, even as an HR professional, by the time you acquire that knowledge and learning, things have changed. So it's a constant learning process, and you have to be prepared for that. If you are not prepared for that, the chances are that, you'll be nowhere. Another thing which HR professionals more and more are required to deal with is virtual teams. You know what are virtual teams? In your textbook, generally, we don't have much mention about it. We have mention about teams, but not virtual teams. Virtual teams mean that you're not dealing, our concept of team generally used to be that team means people are together. They are working together, they are discussing things together. They are at one location doing things. Now they need not be at one location. You might join an organization where at the same level, doing the same type of function, there might be an operator from China. And you might be, your team member may be a Chinese team member. Earlier you didn't think of that, Unless you go to China, you're not going to have a Chinese member. But now, you may be in Ahmedabad or Gandhinagar and your other person, team member may be from some other country. So you have to think of virtual teams. And then, the biggest area of concern, I think, the change in interpersonal skills requirement. Now, this is an issue which is slightly more pervading, whether you are HR or non-HR doesn't make a difference. In organizations now, we are thinking more of interdependence. Interdependence means that you have to deal with other departments. Your success in your operations depend on how other people are doing things in their area of operation. So you require those type of skills to comprehend and understand what others are doing. Now this is something which I must confess, neither in the family nor in an academic institution we do. All our family members tell the younger members of the family, you work hard, you show brilliance, you face interviews, you face examinations, you acquire degrees. So everybody is pushing you to what I like to call individualized excellence. You join an MBA program because you are competent to join an MBA program as an individual, right? In the whole process of your growth, neither in a school nor in the family, people highlighted the fact that you are required to work with others. They give you the impression that you have to be excellent as an individual, rest will follow. Now when you go into organizational life, there are lots of people who have come through the same channel. So there are a lot of excellent people together who have never learned to work together. Chaos. Many times in organizations, we'll find young people, brilliant people who will say, okay boss, you want me to do this job? Leave me alone, I'll do it. 5 o'clock, I will give you the results. But the moment you say three of you work together, 5 o'clock is 0. All the three are equally brilliant, but none of them know how to work with each other. So interpersonal skills is becoming a very major area of concern for HR professionals, because many times in the organization, this is what organizations want you to be doing. So this is what I was telling you, this 3H model. we talked about hands. Then from hands we move to head. Head means what? Talent, abilities, no? Learning. Okay? So there are a lot of emphasis which came in HRD, highlighting the role of head. Make people more competent. Make people learn. No? Give them skills. Now, this is an area, as we all know, again, because it has links with technology. So, what do you want? What type of technology you want people to use? You know? What type of abilities you want people to use? There are lots of things which were done, and even today, when I look at HR textbooks, I find that this is one of the areas which has been very thoroughly, thought about by scholars in the field of HR. But now in the modern times, we have moved from the head and we have gone to the heart. The third edge. Heart means feelings, not just abilities, attitudes. No? Today we talk about emotional intelligence. Contradiction. Intelligence is supposed to be intellectual intelligence. But scholars say in HR that people may be very good in intellectual capacities, but may be very poor when it comes to understanding how to deal with other people, understanding problems of other people, empathizing with other people. You are getting me? No? So this is the third H which we have moved into. And there are certain areas on which research is on, which you don't find in the textbook as yet. For example, in modern times we talk about, in HR, we talk about issues of optimism or issues of happiness. One of my doctoral students did his research on developing a happiness quotient for industry. And he has established, in Ahmedabad, he has established a happiness studio. Because after all, that's what HR should be contributing to, making people happy. No? You can make people competent, but they may not be happy people. And if they are not happy people, they create lots of problems and they suffer lots of difficulties. So we are moving into these different areas, new areas. We also in HR now have to deal with demographics and diversity. For example, dual career couple issues, no? Husband, wife, both are working in new environment, unknown environments, without social support systems. You know, the traditional social support systems of family, no? This is just not available. No? You may be in a town where none of your family or relatives are living. Now, how do you survive? How do you maintain work-life balance? Earlier it was presumed that this work-life balance problem is a problem very typical to female workers in the industry, whether it is at a lower level or it's at a managerial level. But it's not true. Work-life problems are equally affecting people, male of gender also. So this is another big area of concern with which you have to be aware. Then sometimes you also do employer branding or determining best HR practices across the industry. No? And maybe by the time you come to middle management, this becomes a great area of concern. Rightly or wrongly, most of the HR professionals I deal with in industry, pardon my saying so, but I find them very shallow. Their ability to perceive the reality is very poor. They do have backup of books and notes and Google and all those type of things, but their ability to perceive the reality around them is rather poor. And of course, organizations also differ quite a bit about some of their policies, HR policies. We generally believe, wrongly, that private sector organizations are the best in terms of policies and practices, and public sector organizations are poor, both in policies as well as in performance. This type of a notion is a false notion. Some of the most unusual, most innovative HR policies which I have come across, I found in public sector organizations. For example, I'll give you some very shocking examples. This is something which you generally don't find in your textbooks. There was a company, the company is still there, only it's not in the same format. It's called CMC, Computer Maintenance Corporation of India, public sector organization. How did this organization come into existence? I'll just take a minute to explain to you. In the olden days means in the 50s and 60s of the earlier century, which looks like ancient history to you, we didn't have much of computers in the country. We had very few computers, mainframe computers the size of this hall. And they were with IITs, and they were with Atomic Energy Commission of India. Now these computers were imported from US, from a company with which you are all familiar, called IBM. Now for some reasons, IBM decided to walk out of India. Now the problem was the computers are here, nobody to look after the computers. The original American company says, we scrap the deal, we don't want anything to do with you. So we had to think of creating a new company called CMC. That's why it was called Computer Maintenance Corporation. So the Indian employees of the IBM, that got converted into an Indian organization, CMC. Now, I worked as a consultant with this company for a number of years. I found some very, very innovative, absolutely unusual HR policies. For example, one of the policies was, if you are working for CMC and you adopt a child, you get additional increments. Public sector organization, mind you, where we always think of difficulties in changing, difficulties in implementing rules. No? If you adopt a child, you get additional increments. Can anybody tell me what would be the justification for this? What has the company, yes, towards So what? No, but why should the company pay additional increments to a person, to an employee who adopts a child? I asked the chairman, Mr. P.P. Gupta was the chairman, who remained chairman of the company for 16 years, and he was not a computer specialist. He said, in India, when we say that you adopt a child, which type of a child gets adopted? A child who is neglected, no? Maybe a girl child put on the dustbin, unwanted, right? Generally, when we look at adoption of children, majority of adoption comes for children who are absolutely deprived of everything. So he said, you look at the company profile, who are the people in CMC? All the people who are foreign trained, highly skilled computer operators, no? They know how to make computers run. All of them are earning well. All of them have very happy homes. So if they adopt a child, Indian child, the child gets a good home to live in. And he said, in return, what is it that I am paying them? I am only giving them a few extra increments. I have never come across any private or MNC having this type of a thinking about human beings. So, innovation, innovative policies, no? You can use innovative policies for growth of the organization, you can use innovative policies for growth of society. Nowadays, of course, you have CSR, compulsion and all those things. I'm talking of a time when there was no concept of CSR, people were doing on their own. Okay. Then the problem of talent retention, big problem. I think we need not worry about it because we have got enough pool, so people will come and go. No, we should not ask them to stay back. Then this is another area of research with which I have been involved for the past 30, 40 years. That is organizational role and role stress. And my theory of retention is very simple. That if an organization wants people to stay with them, then as an outsider, if you can quantify and measure two things, HR related things, one is organizational role stress, the other is commitment. If you can identify these two elements in the workforce, you can determine and predict which organization, which people will be staying and which people will be quitting. So there is the possibility of prediction. You need not make a sort of prediction based on the movement of the stars and astrology. These are all quantifiable things which we have worked on. Then there is another area of concern with which we are least, as HR professionals, we have been neglecting it. Health, well-being and happiness. About happiness I mentioned to you. Health and well-being are, HR professionals believe is none of their concern. And they will say, if you are sick, if you are unwell, that's your personal problem. We give you compensation. We give you more and more compensation for bad and bad health. HR people have not contributed to health of employees, health of people, especially managerial populations. As you might have read in industrial relations aspects of HR, the lower category employees in India, they enjoy legal safeguards about their health issues, health, injury, whatever. Managerial populations do not enjoy that. There is no law which comes to the help of a manager. And I have not come across an HR professional who will say that health is a very important element of life, in work life. Organizations may be different in their approaches. That also remains. For example, I was one of the earliest few who started working on executive health. It's a very different area of HR. And I found that there are tremendous variation, organization to organization, about executive health and concern for organization for health. And I'm not hesitating in sharing the names of those organizations also. In IIM, I was L&T chair professor for 9 years. So that was professionally the top thing in the country. So when I became L&T chair professor, I met the chief executive of L&T, the one Dr. Rao, and I asked him, you have any expectations from me? He said, no, you do whatever you want to do. We'll support. In fact, you tell me what type of researches you want to do and how we can help you. So I told him that I'm interested in this ubiquitous issue of executive health, and I want some information from your organization. He said, no problem. So he rang up the chief medical officer of L&T, Dr. Punjwani, whom I already knew through other channels. And he said that this professor will be coming and he would like to get some data and information. Please help. So I went to meet Dr. Punjwani, and I found that they were very open about all the health issues. In fact, they had a small passbook for each engineer or manager, and all the things, like if you have taken anacin, it is mentioned you have taken anacin. If you have taken a shot, it is mentioned you have taken shot. If you have undergone blood test, all the reports are there. So everybody had a health data available, and you can find out what's happening to people. This was one organization which was very concerned and very open about health issues. I went to one of the biggest thing in the world, Hindustan Lever, Unilever, and we had a doctor, chief medical officer, was a Gujarati. So I asked him what type of health data he has about his people. He said, what data? I have no data. Then I said, how do you deal with all these executives around? He says, very simple. He used to sit in the headquarters in Back Bay Reclamation. And he said, if one of the general managers or somebody complains to me that, doctor, I'm having headache, no, I won't prescribe a medicine. I'll pick up my phone, talk to a specialist somewhere in Mumbai, arrange for a vehicle, send this man over to the doctor. What happens to him and the doctor or between them, that's none of my business. If he feels fine, he comes next day and says, thank you, doctor, you sent me to such a good person and I'm feeling better. If he doesn't feel better, then I send him to some other doctor. You know? But I'm not concerned about what happens to them. It is their problem and I help them solve the problem. Now, some of the best, so-called best managed organizations have this type of an attitude towards health of their officers and managers. Okay. So this is going to be another area of concern. So before I close, I'll just take a few minutes to explain a few other issues with you. This is my quote. This quotation is my quotation. HRD has a long past but a short history. As I told you, that for a few hundred years, organizations, business organizations have been concerned about what happens to the human element in terms of well-being, in terms of health, in terms of psychological ailments and whatnot. But modern HR is rather short. Okay? Generally, you will say that HR movement started now, recently. It's not true. The recorded movement is short, but the history of HR is very, very long. I'm making a slight departure, taking you to a little higher standards, like if you were in my class in IIM. So, Louis Mumford, the famous sociologist, said that there are 3 phases in which you can divide civilizations and industrialization. First is what he calls the eotechnic phase, which is from 1000 to 1750 AD. This is the period of where you did not have machines, you did not have energy in the form of electricity or atomic power and all that. But this is mostly what we might call rural industrialization. People are using their skills, their hands, they are living in villages, there are no big towns, no big cities. There are very few big cities. So this is the earliest period. Then we come to the 1700 to 1900 phase, where you have coal as energy. This is sometimes also called the dark ages of HR. We call it dark ages because coal is dark and iron, which was the main sort of ingredient for all development, is also dark. So we call them the dark ages. And now we come to the neotechnic phase, which is communication, information, and so many of other things. The modern HR, as I was telling you, starts with the first decade of the 20th century, when we had the First World War, 1914-18. First time, professionals were asked to help armed forces in recruitment, massive recruitment. So they had to select hundreds and thousands of people. And these hundreds and thousands of people were required to be trained in how to use armament, how to use guns, how to use those type of equipments. So the first impact came around that period, mass recruitment, measurement of abilities and IQ. And we also had simultaneously fatigue studies. I'm pretty sure these studies don't appear in your textbooks, those who are going to be HR specialists, but they are very important studies which indicated that, as I was telling you, the work day was 12 hours. So you can't get efficiency from an operator from first hour to the 12th hour. So you have to provide breaks in between. You have to provide time for rest or time for refreshment or something of that sort. So these studies, these were conducted in UK, British, and they were also conducted in India. This I already told you. See, there are, these are the new things. HR with respect to development in the other fields. You are not just, let me assure you, as time passes, if you are not well up with some of these things, you as a HR professional, you'll be losing out. For example, we have social welfare. No? Social welfare was like in MSU, Baroda, we have HR or HR professionals, young professionals like you, coming from 3 different sources. So many times, you know, in selection committees and all this, I'm from MSU. Then we have to ask which MSU, 1, 2, or 3. One is the first HR came from social welfare, Faculty of Social Welfare, MSU. Second MSU, HRD specialist comes from psychology department. They have a diploma in. And the third one comes from the MSU Business School. And I can assure you that the learning provided in the 3 places is quite dissimilar. So, social welfare is one of the earliest, then labor welfare, law, very important. Economic policies and environment, very important for HR professionals to know. They generally believe it's none of our business to know about economic policies and environment. Political science, another discipline which helps understanding of HR better. Sociology and cultural anthropology. This is becoming very important in organizations also, because people come from different cultures, as I was telling you. Somebody may be from China, somebody may be from Japan, somebody may be from India, somebody may be from Sri Lanka, you know, and they all have their own special thing. Also, cross-cultural management, as it is called, is a very, very important branch of knowledge for MBAs. Cross-cultural management. What it means is that since you are going to work with organizations which are not confined to a geographical location, which might be across geographical locations, maybe in different countries, maybe in different continents. So you must know something about what's happening there, what type of language they use, what type of customs they have, what type of food they eat, no? What type of things they accept and what type of things they reject. No? So language also, you know, there are certain words which are prohibited. For example, many of you might have connections with United States of America. Gujarati is known for having a lot of connections. In United States, you are not legally, you are not allowed to use the term Negro. If you use this term, there may be a police case against you. No? Now, in India, we freely use the word Negro, so we are not concerned about it. No? I was in a UNESCO project, and I had a colleague from some African country. And it was a big group of 16 people from 15 different countries. So I started discussing about caste, you know, caste and tribe. This is, we have SC, ST, part of the Constitution of India, so it's nothing unusual. So I was talking, I used the word tribe. And there was a lady from Germany, as a member, fellow member, who later told me that how could you use this term, tribe? I said, why? What is so unusual? We in India, we don't take it seriously, we use this term. He said, no, you are not aware, this gentleman is from Africa, and Africans don't like to hear the word tribe. So sometimes we are not aware or we are not sensitive enough to know what is in language, what is acceptable and what is not acceptable. And this becomes an area of concern for people in organizations. Then you'll be surprised, neurology, even the physiological system, physiological structures. Technology, I think everybody knows about technology, and then communication, IT, and social networking, etc. These are all the related fields, you know. So when you are trying to develop yourself as an HR professional, at least some of these you need to be aware of. We have now modern HR emphasizes the Hawthorne study. I'm sure everybody knows about Hawthorne studies, HR or no HR. You know what was the basic contribution of Hawthorne studies? They were not about productivity, though generally it's believed that they gave us some idea about productivity, team productivity and all. No. Hawthorne studies told us that there's a lot of impact on our thought processes, impact coming from other people with whom we work in the organization. So, in advanced OB or HR, you find something like Pygmalion effect. You know Pygmalion effect? That is, a person gives high performance if he or she is expected to give high performance. Or a person gives low performance because you expect that person to give low performance. So it has nothing to do with the ability of the individual. The individual does not give you high performance in spite of the fact that he or she is capable of giving high performance. So what you expect has an impact on what the individual does. So similarly, we also get adversely affected by other people's things. So there is now, as I was telling you, there is a shift from physiological concerns to socio-psychological concerns. And these are some of the current issues in HR, because you're talking about what you want today and what you want tomorrow. One is, as I gave you this concept of optimism. You know what is this optimism? Optimism is where people in the organization believe that they are going to succeed. No? They believe in success. They are optimistic about success. The opposite is helplessness. So some people will say, like if I was to give an example, some of you like me would not have been would not have studied in English medium school. Am I right? I never studied in English medium school. In fact, the city where I studied, there were no English medium schools. So sometimes people will say, I'm not successful, or I get rejected because I studied through Hindi medium or Gujarati medium or something like that. I personally feel there is no such thing. If you did not study, if you didn't have that environmental support, you can still make up. If I would have had that type of a failure ingrained in me, that because I did not go to an English medium school, therefore I am not going to be successful, I don't know, maybe I would never have been selected by a place like IIM to teach there. Or Banaras Hindu University, which I served for 15 long years. So organizations also believe, or people in organizations also have this type of optimistic attitude or helplessness attitude. And if you have that helplessness attitude, you can't be succeeding. One of my PhD students has done a very beautiful study. It's printed in one of the Harvard journals also, on optimism and mergers and acquisitions. He works for Hewlett-Packard, IT. And Hewlett-Packard had lots of takeovers, mergers. He studied some 52 different mergers. And he found that some of them are successful and some of them are not successful. And there are various theories which prove or which suggest that why mergers are successful and why they are not successful. But he focused on optimism. And he found that ultimate result was that with the help of optimistic outlook study, you can be 90% sure of predicting whether this merger is going to be successful or not. And mind you, he is a hardcore engineer, and he did his study, his PhD work in HR. So what I'm trying to tell you is that these are new things. We have positive psychology, which talks of optimism, talks of happiness. Then spirituality, which is another area of concern, and I think most of the people are very happy with when they talk about spirituality. Stress management, about which I mentioned. Change management and OD, work-life balance. Internationalization of business with all these ramifications. And of course, the virtual teams, which has been a bugging issue for organizations. I think I will stop here. I've also made use of Rajeshwari's time. So but if there are any questions, they can ask later, or you can ask me a question in Hindi or Gujarati also. I don't mind.
Any questions related to HR?
Yeah. Yeah.
Not related to his speech.
Please, you won't get such platform to ask your questions. और ऐसा जरूरी नहीं है questions तो आपके सिली है या नहीं वो हमें तय करने दो. You just speak up. You may ask in Gujarati, you may ask in Hindi. छोटे से लेके सबसे बड़ा. Second semester students, you are studying HRM already. Fourth semester, you have your subjects like HRD and SHRM. There are so many things which are going in the same line. You don't know. We know that sir has covered so many GTU questions also. Let me tell you, frankly. So it is not like that it is, I mean. So please speak up. No questions?
Okay. Yeah.
As ma'am also said that it is very hard, means money oriented word, everything has to be quantified. So in HR, I think everything can't be quantified. So what do you think?
This question actually is not something which is of a very recent origin. It is there for the past 20 years in our country. Why HR people are not given their due respect by the organization? That's what, There are various answers to this question. And again, the situation is different in different types of organizations. There's another issue which I have not mentioned here. In HR and in most of your new textbooks, you will find a mention about it. This is called HPWS. HPWS stands for High Performance Work Systems. Now, when you look at performance or productivity in the organization, traditionally we have believed that productivity depends on technology. Better technology, better productivity. HR people have been saying that productivity is not just a function of technology, it is also a function of the people who use that technology. Okay? So many a times there are fewer people showing high performance and there are many people showing low performance. So people matter. Now, if I was to give you an opinion which is a little unkind opinion, not very patronizing opinion about HR professionals. What do HR professionals do in the organization? We have been talking about talent acquisition, talent retention. You look at the career path of HR professionals. They themselves don't stay with the same organization long enough. They are supposed to look after retention of employees. No? They're supposed to help the organization so the employees don't leave. Where they themselves quit, they themselves move. So there's some type of anachronism. Organization says this man talks something but behaves differently. Now these are some of the issues. The other issue is that each line manager, we always propose, each line manager is supposed to be an HR manager. So HR is not a function or a department separated, existing in the organization. And they are supposed to look after everybody, and everybody is supposed to forget that they have to look after themselves also. So many organizations where they believe that HR is a separate function, let them sit in the corner, let them do their things, there you will find this type of attitude, that HR is not given its importance. But if HR can convince line managers that what they are doing is very important, and a major part of the thing they do is actually HR related activities. I'll give you an offbeat example of this thing. We did some work with the public health systems in the country, and that work I did even in WHO, in other countries. And my job was to convert doctors into managers. I repeat, I was handling this task, converting doctors into managers. Doctors have a very strong sense of clinical identity. You go and meet any doctor, you will say, I'm an ophthalmologist, I'm gynecologist, I'm a child specialist, isn't it? So they all have very strong sense of clinical identity. In public health systems, anywhere in the world, in other countries also, many times what they are doing is non-clinical. So they have to maintain a team, no clinical work. They have to maintain records, no non-clinical. They have to maintain finances, non-clinical. They have to maintain leave records. They are doing 20 different things which have nothing to do with their clinical identity. But whenever you talk to them, they will say, I am a specialist. Now my task was to convert this man to think that besides being a specialist in the medical profession, he actually is a manager. He is managing a service, right? So once they get into that mold and they start thinking that what I am doing is managerial, not necessarily clinical, the respect for HR increases. But it is left to the HR person to prove that he can convince the other party that they are contributing something. So now there is a new branch of knowledge, sub-branch in HR, that is we call HPWS, High Performance Work Systems. And what it means is that even in production organizations, hardcore production organizations, forget about service organizations and things of that sort, what people do and what you do with people ultimately adds to your success. And this work is done by very competent HR professionals. Let me tell you why this is possible in our country. Because when we started with HR about 40, 50 years ago, in India we did not have trained HR professionals anywhere. There were no MBA HR. No? And some of the earliest HR professionals were engineers. I remember when we started with BHEL, which was a huge public sector organization. We were looking for an HR, competent HR head. We couldn't find anybody. One of the factory managers, mind you, hardcore factory manager, engineer, and BHEL factory means there are 200, at least 200 engineers working under him. That type of a person, that type of seniority. He volunteered that I will take up HR role. So everybody said, how you have never done HR in your life, you have been a production man and you will fail. He said, fail ho jaunga to fail ho jaunga. Punjabi aadmi the Mr. G.D. Datta, I remember. So he said, let me try. So he became the HR chief. From factory manager, he quit that job and he became HR chief. He was the most successful HR manager or HR chief with BHEL head till he retired. Now what does it prove? It proves that there is a transaction possible, both sides. An engineer can learn from us and we can learn from an engineer. See? What happens is, and again, my observation may sound a little unkind to you, I've seen many organizations who have HR professionals who know nothing about HR. All they do is, they get contracts or contractors to do the HR job. Recruitment, hired out. No? Salary payments, hired out. Everything is outsourced. So most of the HR people, I have interactions with organizations, modern organizations and modern HR people. They don't care to know anything about HR. Then how do you expect the other side to respect you? When they know that what you are doing is something very perfunctory, whether you have an HR MBA or not, this job could be done by someone else also. Same duties can be assigned to the finance person and he or she will also be able to do it. So what is your niche? What is your contribution? So these are issues, these are ground realities. But this HPWS thing is again coming up in a big way in our country. And we have done some very good researches on high performing work systems. In fact, there is a new book coming in February. February starts tomorrow, day after. So maybe on the 1st of February, there will be a new book on OD and HR. This is a volume, a fairly big volume on which Professor T.V. Rao and Anil Khandelwal, who was managing director of Bank of Baroda, the two of them have put together a volume as a memorial to Professor Uday Parikh, his death anniversary. And in this book, I have a chapter on high performance work systems as a new dimension of HR. So those of you who are interested can get it. Okay. Thank you so much.